Welcome to MedTech Speed to Data, a KeyTech podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rogers, VP of Business Development at KeyTech. Each month, me and a KeyTecher are going to interview a MedTech leader and talk to them about the critical data-driven decisions they make in their programs. All right, we're back with Jake and Steve here, talking with CEO Steve Schaefer from CoolTech. All right, so episode 2 of MedTech Speed to Data, we're going to be talking about the other product that CoolTech is developing, the MiHelper platform. So Steve, do you want to describe the MiHelper for our audience, please?
Sure. MiHelper is a non-drug therapy for migraine. It's something that people will be able to use at home when they feel a migraine coming on. Quick 10-minute therapy to make it go away.
So this is the sister product to the CoolStat platform. So I'm curious, how did you discover, and I know this was kind of discovered, I guess, after the CoolStat, the in-clinic platform was being developed. How did you discover that it might be effective for migraines?
Well, people have used oxygen therapy to treat cluster headaches and migraines in the past, and it's been pretty successful. A little bit difficult to deliver and not really feasible for at-home therapy, but it had efficacy. And a prototype study was done at Johns Hopkins to compare oxygen therapy and just simple dry room air compared to a control group. And it showed a significant pain reduction in the dry air arm over the control.
And what data specifically showed that?
It was the outcomes data. So with migraine, it's a subject-reported pain and other bothersome symptoms. And they say what it was like in the beginning and whether it was reduced or went away. Got it.
Sounds pretty clear cut there. So question for you. So the MiHelper, what is your regulatory pathway to get this product on the market?
So it's similar to CoolStat in that it's a 510K process, but like CoolStat, it will probably be a de novo process, meaning you're not claiming a predicate, but you're also saying that it doesn't require a PMA, which is a longer, more rigorous path.
So you've developed you're in trials now, sounds like, and you've developed a clinical trial device. So can you describe, what this trial device is more specifically? And then is this trial device, how is this trial device different from your commercial device?
So we're actually, for the current randomized controlled trial, using a modified version of CoolStat. So one of the great things about having an outsourced development partner is it makes you nimble. We were able to work with CoolTech to modify CoolStat to work for the migraine delivery. So instead of a closed loop temperature management system, it's an open loop specified flow rate for a specified time period. Similar patient interface, except for we actually have incorporated a nebulized mist of saline for added comfort and tolerability. Because people have migraines, we want it to be a very pleasant therapy. So we were able to make those changes. What's exciting and coming right around the corner is a completely new product designed for at-home use, which KeyTech is also doing the development for, and leveraging the background experience they've had with CoolStat. So that is a product that's going through a verification validation process. We'll go to the FDA most likely and get an IDE and run studies with people at home so they can have it at their bedside.
Yeah, so you have sort of an in-clinic study sort of going now with a modified product, and then in parallel you've got your more commercial ambulatory product that will also need a trial in parallel, but you'll be confident that the data from the first trial will work, or the platform will work in your second trial, sounds like.
Yeah, it'll be different because it's a different use case. When you're in clinic, you have to develop a migraine, You've got to travel in without taking any rescue medication. Hours later, get the therapy. It's going to be a different use case and different patient population. So we expect the at-home data to look even stronger than the in-clinic data.
A lot of companies are looking to go from in-clinic to at-home. I have to ask, as what considerations are you making in your product development plans now for eventually running a clinical trial at home? So, so not in a controlled environment. This is a different world. So how are you planning for running a trial in the home environment?
Well, it starts with the device requirements and the standards for at-home use, which are very different. And you also have to incorporate, usability and other design considerations around the fact that you're not going to have someone administering the therapy. It has to be completely self-guided. Things have to be very obvious, very simple. You're not going to have an expert user. Everything you could imagine they shouldn't do, they'll probably try. And you have to make sure that it's always safe, regardless of what they do. It's a lot more work. There's a lot more rigorous standards for at-home devices. And so you have to work with your development partner. First, you hope to have all the experience in that. Ours does, which is great. And you go from there.
Is the device, the at-home device, connected, like paired with a smartphone or not? Or is it just direct to a cloud?
No, it has a companion app with it. And eventually in the commercial product, that'll be a large aspect of it. People who suffer from migraine, which is the 5th leading cause of ER visits, they deal with a lot of trauma. It's very disabilitating. And they need to track their triggers, they need to diary things. And so having a companion app that ties along with the therapy is very important.
Is it worth having the app in the trial? Like, why are you doing that? I know that complicates the development and maybe safety testing to do leading up to the trial. Why are you using the app in the trial? So that's my first question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're intentionally making it unidirectional. So we're not allowing the app to make any changes to the device, not even the potential for firmware changes. So the user's they're going to press the button on the box, not press the button on their phone. And that eliminates a lot of the security issues, which you don't want to even deal with in the study. What we do want to get, and we have Bluetooth connectivity to enable it, is we want to be able to pull out the device data into the app and through the cloud securely to us so we can monitor the device performance.
Got it. So what are you envisioning for the commercial device then? Because it makes sense in the trial that you don't want people programming the device with the app, but in the commercial product, how do you envision the app being used with the product?
So we expect there to be user controls on the app to be able to customize settings, to be able to track the number of treatments, to be able to diary their experience with their headaches. So we expect it to be a robust kind of self-care app. Also, they can order supplies through the app, very importantly. And people want that, right? They want to make it simple, easy. They want everything recorded.
Yeah, sorry, Steve, I'm going a little off script. I'm trying to get some sound bites on at-home trial design. So,
well, there's a lot I could talk about with at-home trial design because it is completely different than the in-hospital trials.
So that's what I want to focus on. Like, I want to convey the story of developing a product for effective at-home trials, and in the context of what you care about, which is what is that trial and what data are you getting from it. So we touched on a kind of a one-way Bluetooth connection, so that the phone is really just beaming the data to the cloud. Are there other like in-home trial, in-home medical device trial considerations that we haven't covered that maybe aren't connected to the app, aren't related to the app rather?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a modern thing in clinical trials at home is these decentralized clinical trials. So they're not going through an institution, not going through a hospital, but they're going through a central institutional review board. There's going to be PIs that may be employed by the company or a third party CRO. And those platforms start with recruitment. So you're going out normally through social media or through advocacy groups where patients are coming to looking for solutions. And you can cast a very wide net, very cost effectively. I mean, we used it even for our in-clinic study, and we had 5,000 people apply for trials within just a 50-mile radius around 3 different centers. So imagine if you could broadcast that out to the entire U.S. population. You're not limited to the fact that someone lives in Iowa and the center is in California. So it's very different, and a lot of these new companies have developed platforms that have the apps. They can do the training, they can do the tracking, the data collection. It's all on one platform, and it's a completely different way to manage clinical trials. You can get a lot of leverage out of it, and actually, we're considering using their app, one clinical trial partner's app, to pull the data through our Bluetooth with our design. So working with our design partner, CoolTech, we've been able to not duplicate efforts in that application development, which is a huge cost savings.
I guess I'm curious. So, Steve, in a sense, these at-home clinical devices are really going out into the wild. Can you take us through the life of these devices? So they're built, they have to get to users in their home, set up, used, and then back to you. Could you maybe step us through the process for doing that?
Yeah, and that is a challenge because you're losing sight of it. You may be able to watch the therapy through an app while they're doing it. They actually have software that blurs out the subject's faces during that recorded time. But you are losing physical custody of the device, so you have to have fulfillment that ties to the clinical trial enrollment to get the device to the user's home. You have to train them on use of the device. You have to record the events, and then you have to get it back. You also have to think about, what are the components of the device? Do I have a durable piece that's going to be reusable? Is it okay for that to then be used for another subject? Or is there any possibility of any form of contamination? And you have to have a kind of reprocessing and a re-sanitation procedure or sterilization, depending on what you're doing. For us, it's making sure that the device is wiped down, but we don't plan to use the tube sets and the hand-sets ever again. It'll be single use, and not only for subject. It'll be only a single subject that will use it, but we still are going to make it disposable. And the same thing we have a desiccant cartridge that dries the air, and that will be single use as well. So the only thing that we plan on reusing is the boxes, and that's to limit the amount of regulatory issues and safety issues. But you want to get that box back, and a lot of them don't ever make its way back.
Sure.
So obviously you're not going to, whatever type of compensation that you provide that once you get your device back.
So eventually, at-home users could clean or disinfect their own devices and reuse them, but you've completely eliminated that step by making them disposable for the trial only, which really sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, it's a lot faster and easier, and there's less risk.
Another question, to field that many devices at homes, did you partner with another company to help fulfill those shipments? How did you make that work?
Yeah, so we haven't done it yet, but we're planning on using our contract manufacturer to do that. So they'll drop ship it to the customer's home, and they'll receive it back and reprocess what needs reprocessing and dispose of what needs disposing.
Got it.
It's pretty simple logistics.
What data are you pulling off the device specifically? So turn on, turn off, runtime. I know for a migraine study, it's kind of a qualitative. How did you feel? But what are you collecting?
Yeah, so for migraine, it's all about just device performance. So what was the target flow rate? What was the actual flow rate? What was the relative humidity coming in to the device, going out of the device? What was the temperature of the air? All things like that. Was there any back pressure notice? Every second the device is logging, all of its parameters. And if there was any like errors or events, it's going to track all of that. But the information that the endpoints are based on are all reported by the subject. What scale is my headache pain when I started, right after the therapy, at 2 hours, at 24 hours? That is a subjective reported event.
So, Steve, when you plan this study, I'm sure you have to assume that there's some fallout, and not every at-home user is going to use the device correctly. They may not write down their information as expected. So, do you enroll, more users than you would need in the end?
Yes, you do, and you follow up.
Sure.
You're not just going to trust that they've done it. You're going to see whether they've done it. You're going to call them if they haven't. Log their stuff. But you do have to count for people falling out of the study for one reason or another.
And are you getting in trial data, and are you modifying the therapy, like on the CoolStat platform? You made some pivots here or there. Just curious, how the trial's going, or what are you planning to kind of potentially change as the trial rolls out?
Well, unless you have an adaptive trial design where you've already created variables to make changes, based on the data that you're accumulating on the way, you really can't do that. You have to stick to your protocol all the way through. So it's a big investment in getting it right in the planning.
Yeah, so let's touch on that just a little bit more. So what data did you collect pre-trial to tell you what parameters to use for this migraine therapy?
So we're in process of that right now. We have a study in clinic called the CALM study, Cooling for the Alleviation of Migraine. And the data from that study, which has various flow rates, is going to inform the protocol for the at-home study. And we're going to get as much possible data as we can out of that study in order to make assessments on the length of the therapy, the flow rate, or dose, what should that be? How do we design a sham that has no activity in it, which is really important and difficult. So all of that we're still getting educated on from the data from the current study.
What steps are you taking to know that the MiHelper is ready to go to homes for clinical trials? Because I'm sure with an expensive study like this, the last thing you want is to ship a bunch of devices and then find out that you have bugs. That would be a nightmare. So maybe you could talk us through, how you'll be ready to go.
Well, from a device preparation standpoint, we're working with our development partner to do all the verification and validation work, the external lab testing, the biocompatibility work, the aging testing for disposables. All of that's being done by the prescribed methods and regulations. That's going to give us incredibly high confidence that the device is going to perform, it's going to perform safely, and it's operating to its specifications.
Understood. Yeah. So it sounds like you're under full design control, following relevant standards, all that sort of stuff, so that you know that it's a robust design. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. And it meets all the at-home standards.
Sure.
Steve, a slightly different question, but I think it's a really important one. So, what does your team structure look like there at CoolTech to support an at-home, startup medical device trial? You mentioned outsourced product development partner, but what does your team look like?
Yeah, so I say it looks small but mighty. We have a total of this many, 4 people that are full-time employees. There's myself. There is a senior product engineer, and there's a director of clinical operations and a clinical research associate. And they work together with our regulatory consultants, our clinical advisory board, our chief science officer, all of which are on a contract basis with us. And that allows us to just use the expertise that we need when we need it, not carry a huge overhead, allows us to be flexible and nimble to make changes. And then, of course, having an outsourced development partner gives us incredible flexibility and access to resources that we could never afford to, have on staff.
Got it. So keep it lean, sounds like.
As lean as you can for as long as you can until you get to the point where you're out there really generating the revenues and you want to create scale and you want to create more control. But when you're in that earlier stage until you get to a growth stage, it's better to be as lean as possible and to get all the resources channeled into what drives the most value. And that's, hitting product development milestones, it's hitting regulatory milestones, and most importantly, it's generating high quality evidence for everything that you'll need down the line.
Got it. All right. So I think we're ready for the lightning round, but this time, the lightning round is framed for startup medical device companies embarking on in-home clinical trials. Let's keep that lens on this lightning round. So Steve, what advice would you have for another startup CEO who's looking to run an in-home clinical trial?
I would say go out to the market and find these emerging companies that are using a convergence of new technology to operate in the at-home world. It's completely different than the old traditional on-premise studies, and you really have got to break the mold and go with a whole new set of people and partners.
Which partners, if you don't mind my asking? If you don't want to answer that, that's fine. I'm just, we're a media company here, Steve, so we're looking to create good content.
Controversy. we're in the RFP process. There are a number of great firms that are out there, but
Okay.
You can go for an all-in-one, or you can look for a clinical trial recruitment company. You can look for an EDC company. You can look for a CRO. You can rent a PI. You can go to. There are professional research private institutions that work with these vendors, but they provide the clinical oversight. You don't have to own any of that. You can go out and use that. And I would say, don't get hung up with using an academic center. Despite the appeal, the patina of the thought leader that's there, it's all about the quality of the evidence and not the name on the paper.
That's a great soundbite. Yeah, we might have to turn that into a T-shirt, Steve. We have not talked about product development, mainly just because it's key tech doing the development. But I guess, Steve, as CEO of a startup company going into an at-home clinical trial, what advice do you have for other startup CEOs as it relates to selecting product development teams, whether it's an internal and external team, and getting the right device in that trial?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that having capability in the requirements phase, having an understanding of the regulations that will apply that are very different early on, that's important, because you're not likely to have any clue what those at-home standards are. You're not going to have a clue in terms of the usability requirements and all the things that an outsourced firm has seen over the years and years and years of what can go wrong. They've seen it. So it's very important, I think, to leverage that. And I guess the other thing I would say is understanding what the product development firm is good at and where they want to or should hand it off to a contract manufacturer. And a lot of that's about, cost and efficiency, which are important. Like every dollar counts if you're in a startup phase.
So you're going to take MiHelper to trials. Let's say that the data looks great, everything goes well. Next step is commercialization. What things have you done to set yourself up to bridge that gap from the trial devices to the commercial devices?
Well, aside from doing a lot of research, we haven't done anything, and nor should we, because there's going to be ample time in order to ramp that up. Understanding the market, understanding the pricing and business models. There's when you get to at home and direct to consumer marketing, it's very different, including the reimbursement models. So you may have a device which ends up on a drug formulary and is part of a PBM. That's very different because it's like a dose. And you might want to set up your device to be a per-use device under software controls and not necessarily physical controls of the old razor blade model. So you don't necessarily, sometimes you want a disposable. Well, maybe you don't because you can do it a different way in an at-home setting under a formulary reimbursement model. So it's thinking through all of that stuff, but not spending a lot of money until you have the evidence, you're farther down the regulatory pathway. It's better to keep your powder dry.
Would you advise for startup companies that are ultimately going to be an in-home product to do what you're doing, which is try and do kind of like a smaller study with a modified, maybe existing product to get the data for confidence? Or do you think in certain situations it makes sense just to develop the actual, grow close to the commercial product and just go right to in-home trials?
Yeah, so if you're going to have an at-home product, the sooner you can get it into an at-home study, the better. It takes a while to develop the device that lets you get there. So you might want to be doing some in-clinic work along the way. And it depends on the nature of the product, whether it's a device or therapeutic. If it's a therapeutic and you don't know exactly the mechanism of action, you just have a theory on it, which is pretty much it's most therapeutic medical devices, then you've really got to think of the outcomes study, and you should try to iterate through dose escalation studies, through adaptive trial designs, smaller studies, to gain different foundations of understanding before you jump into a big pivotal study. So even when we go to the at-home study, we plan to do some more dose ranging work at home to confirm where we want to run our pivotal study.
All right. Steve, thanks for sitting in today for 2 episodes. Episode 2 here, focusing on the MiHelper. Jake, thanks for being such a great co-host. And everybody, that concludes episode 2 of Speed to Data here at CoolTech. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to MedTech Speed to Data, a KeyTech podcast. Join us each month for more ways to get the right data faster to inform critical decisions. Find additional resources on our website, keytechinc.com. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, and please leave a review on iTunes whenever you listen. Thanks.